Dr. Yevok Osvalcha. Hi, hello, and welcome. It's John Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And today I have a community question to answer, which I'm delighted for. So thank you very much for all of you here who are joining us on this journey in YouTube as we try and fulfill our 90-day commitment of turning up every day with a new video. So it's been great. And one of the things I'm really grateful, very much grateful for, is the community, which is developing and commenting and connecting with us. And so the question I have, it comes from the video I did on the other day called I Work for the Dagda, and how when I talk about work, it is different to spiritual worship or connection. So in that video, you'll be able to kind of go and find it. It's literally on the 2 days ago on the channel called I Work for the Dagda. And just in brief, really, there is a difference between kind of engaging in a practice of spiritual growth and spiritual relationship with a deity and in stepping into a formal agreement of vocation or work. And that's what I mean when I say work. So, you know, I worship the Dagda. I have a good relationship with the Dagda. He is the god who I have. Well, I met him through the goddess Morrigan, and you know, again, I've videos on how I met the Morrigan and videos on how I met the Dagda in here. So if you want to know the backstory, it's all there to find. But yeah, this idea of vocation, and not everyone is called for vocation. Not everyone is called to do work in that way for a deity. Sometimes it is just a matter of you establishing your own relationship of connection with the deity over time. So on that, I had a really fantastic question from Mia Snowdrop, who was asking, I connected with Bridget first and the Dagda later. I know you're not necessarily involved with Bridget in a comparable way, but I was wondering whether you had anything to share on work connected to two deities who are so closely related. And then they said, I hope it's not a silly question. So the first things first, Mia, it's not a silly question. It's a fascinating question. It's an awesome question. And it's something that's very common and typical when you're dealing with Irish deities. So again, I have said this multiple times. I love a question. I love a good question, or any question, because it gives us an opportunity to explore and consider and, you know, engage in perspective and discussion, which invariably helps everybody. So working with the Dagda, he is the god that I work for. I don't have any specific formal relationship of vocation with other deities myself, but that doesn't mean that they're not around. And this is one thing that we find very common in people's experience with the Irish deity specifically. It is because they are multifaceted deities. So in some other structured pantheons, you go to a particular god or goddess for a particular role, be it like, you know, healing, or for love, or for kind of crafts. You know, there's different kind of deities that fit a specific kind of role or purpose in other pantheons. When it comes to the Irish pantheon, every single god has a hand in almost a bit of everything. There is no one god of just this. And that can make it challenging, even down to Gwivnu, the god of smithcraft. He's also a god of hospitality in a very kind of a, like, well, okay, it's an odd reference. I've read it once quite a while ago, but it does discuss how the gods would gather for Gwivnu's feasts, and it was at Gwivnu's feasts that there was like something that they would consume that aided in their immortality. Now, whether or not that comes from the idea of ambrosia or from other kind of beliefs in spirituality and mythology, but it does still have this, that Gwivnu's feast was a big deal for the gods to kind of engage in and to work with. But he's also the god of smithcraft, you know, so it's not just that you go talk to him for food, you go talk to him for a bit of a good time as well. Which you will also talk to the Dagda for, who's a god of hospitality. When you talk about Bridges, in fact, Orla Costello is doing a fantastic kind of course. It's the second year we've run it now in the school, called Bridget in Ireland, which kind of explores the multifaceted relationship of Bridget as the poet, the goddess of poetry, as smithcraft, goddess of healing. So there's so many different aspects to that. And that's one thing that can be very challenging when you're kind of dealing with these deities. Like, you don't just go to each god for different things. You can kind of communicate and engage with different relationships with different gods, but you don't have to in some ways, because they're so multifaceted and multi-skilled. But when it comes down to Bridget and the Dagda. We know that Bridget is daughter of the Dagda very clearly. It is mentioned in multiple places, and it's not mentioned who her mother is. So be clear on that. There's no mythology currently translated that gives who Bridget's mother is. I have my suppositions, but that's my opinion on it. But when it comes to her relationship with her dad, like, she's definitely a daughter of the Dagda. And there's many times where the children of the Dagda are referred specifically to as the Dagda's children. From Aids to Kermit to Anya, like, there's so many of them that are specifically of the Dagda, or daughter of the Dagda, son of the Dagda. So we know Bridget has that very relationship, has that, like, you know, family relationship with the Dagda, which is why it's not surprising when one or the other will turn up afterwards. What I have found in working in this field for a while now, and people coming to me for spiritual consultations and conversations and just kind of checking in, and again, those really great questions, is that, you know, someone might begin a relationship and be establishing a relationship with one of the gods of the Irish pantheon, and then over time their awareness kind of shifts slightly, and then there's other gods turning up, and then, like, they feel that there's more presence around them, and what suddenly started as an altar space to Bridget now has a bit of a Dagda corner or a bit of a Lou corner. You know, somewhere over there they've got Oma kind of chuckling along, telling them stories or stuff, or you know, sharing kind of stuff with them. Like, it happens. And from my experience, and from, you know, the experience of many people out there, the Irish pagan deities, the Tuatha Dé Danann gods, are a close-knit bunch. They're a very close-knit bunch. And, you know, it's rare, I think, to find a person who doesn't in some way interact with or honor multiples of them. Okay, so it's not uncommon, Mia, that you end up with other gods turning up. Now, when it comes to this purpose of vocation, this concept of work, I have had multiple people kind of ask, like, well, do they get jealous of each other? Do I have to, like, have a favorite? Do I need to kind of, you know, offer more to one than I offer to the other? Do I need to have an allegiance here? And it's going to be unique to each person. You know, I'm Team Dagda all the way. I just am. But, you know, I have a conversational relationship with the Morrigan. You know, she has my love and she has my respect, but she doesn't have my service. Bridget, my relationship with Bridget, okay, I'm gonna, you know, talk again. I'm gonna, like, okay, the warning up front: don't do things the way I do. All right. I have a certain level of irreverence when it comes to certain relationships with deity, because I feel that connection in that way. Maybe it's because I have him in my corner, maybe it's because of his humor as well, but, like, I have a lot of respect and a lot of love for Bridget, but I also, this is going to come across really weird, but to me it's like, oh, it's Bridget, you know, pat on the head, I love you, kiddo. But, like, she's not my daughter, she's his daughter, you know, and she's a fucking goddess. She would absolutely wreck me if she took it in her head to do so. But in some way, I feel a familial connection. It's probably bleed over from my relationship with him towards Bridget. She does not in any way need my affection, or not in any way need my work at all. But I really enjoy it. Like, even sitting on Orla's classes as a facilitator, you know, I love multiple times going through the course about Bridget, and, like, you know, learning more and experiencing more around her. So what it really comes down to get back on track and stop my ramble, is this concept of work and this vocation. If it is a circumstance where you have established such a connection with multiple deities that you have multiple vocations, that is okay, and that happens from time to time. But it's important to make sure that you're being very clear in what fits in with each category, and not to kind of allow the lines to blur too much, because your responsibilities to each deity is a responsibility to that individual connection. I'm going to go with an analogy here that might work. If you think about it from a point of view of having multiple friendships, or even polyamory, multiple relationships, Just because you invest time in one relationship doesn't mean that the other relationships don't also need an investment of time and energy and connection. And so it is a point of view of, being able to keep those things separate, but then also know that they're all the one thing for you when it comes to you and your connection and your bond. So you might have different bonds with different deities for different things, but it is still all going to be filtering in part of you and your own growth and your own spiritual kind of connection and process. So when it comes to vocation, if you're concerned about them and how they get on, because I've had people, oddly, actually, here's a weird one. There was someone who suggested that the Morrigan and Maeve were enemies. No, that was their experience. They may have been experiencing personal animosity between them or some kind of connection. But at no point in the lore at all is the Morrigan and the Maeve positioned as rivals or enemies or one jealous of the other in any way, shape, or form. And there are times where, like, you might be arranging altar space, like altars behind me, and you might have, okay, well, I need to put this space here, I need to move this here. And what it will really come down to is that spiritual sensitivity of the right relationship. So as you've kind of built up your connection with the gods and the goddesses, you will find that, over time, some of them may require a bit more space, and some of them might not require any space. I've had some people talk to me as Bridget people, and then suddenly they're like, what do I do? I have a Dagda turning up and I've no space for him. And it's like, well, he'll let you know if you need space. And I think, to draw it to a close, that is the big thing behind all of this. You need to be able to balance it out in such a way that it works for you and your connection with both of them, but also trust the process, trust yourself, and trust your connections. And there's nothing wrong with asking and trying to clarify as we go along. And I do find sometimes that Dagda is like, yeah, that's my kiddo. And sometimes that can be a bit of fun in regards to the relationship, but just manage the balance, if that makes sense, because you have those relationships to take care of. So I do hope that answers your question, Mia, and thank you very much. It's not a silly question. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, all of you, look after yourself, take care of yourself, and slán. Goodbye.